In the 13th century, the city of Konya, located in what is modern-day Turkey, stood at the crossroads of different worlds. Byzantine and Persian, Christian and Muslim, Turkic and Arab, all the cultures mixed together in this small piece of land. It was a time of migration, trade, and uncertainty. Amid the turbulence, a mystic named Jalaluddin Rumi began to speak of love as the fabric of existence. For him, it was not an emotion, but the force that holds the universe together. Around him, a community took shape that came to be known as the Mevlevi Order, and in the heart of this practice was movement. Movement towards God and towards remembrance. The spinning of the dervishes or Sema ritual is perhaps one of the most recognized images of Islamic mysticism. Yet, its meaning is often misunderstood. What the uninitiated perceive as a graceful dance is a form of prayer. It is a physical meditation born from the Sufi understanding that the body is the translator for the language of the soul. According to tradition, the origin of the Sema ritual traces back to a day when Rumi, walking through the bazaar, heard the rhythmic hammering of goldsmiths. The sound struck him as the pulse of creation, as the beat of divine unity beneath the noise of the world. He lifted his arms and began to turn, slowly, as if caught in the orbit of something vast. Around him, the market continued, but for him, time dissolved into rhythm. Later, the ritual would be formalized by his son, Sultan Walad, into a complex ritual that came to define the Mevlevi order. The Mevlevis belonged to a broader Sufi tradition that had already been developing for centuries. Sufism was never a sect or a dogma, but a path, or tariqa in Arabic, which is the word commonly used to describe it. The Sufi teachings show a way of returning to the divine source. The practices varied across regions, but they shared one principle, that knowledge of God is not only to be thought about, but to be experienced through breath, through remembrance, which they call dhikr, through rhythm, and through the refinement of the body. Manuals, such as the treatise of Al-Qushayrī of a relation of the hidden, describe the process as the polishing of the heart. Movement was not excluded from this polishing like in many other religious teachings. It was one of its main instruments. By the 14th century, Mevlevi lodges called tekke had appeared across the Ottoman world. From Konya to Aleppo, from Istanbul to Cairo, the order was spreading across the Islamic world. Each had its own ritual hall called Semahane, a space proportioned according to the sacred geometry. The circle was the dominant form, representing a mirror of celestial motion. Every architectural detail guided movement of the dervishes. The musician's gallery was raised higher up to not obstaculize the path. The wooden floors tuned to amplify the rhythm of the steps. The central axis of the room marking the cosmic center. The training of a dervish was by no means light. Novices entered the lodge for 1,001 days, nearly 3 years, of service and study. They swept floors, cooked, washed, and served the elders before even being allowed to whirl. They memorized verses from Rumi's Maḥnawī poem and learned sikr, the rhythmic chanting of divine names, until the repetition began to alter their breath and pulse. Every action in the tekke was part of the training and had to be done with full awareness. They came to move gradually. The preliminary practice was standing still with feet grounded, body aligned around an invisible axis running from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. They trained the gaze by fixing attention inward, softening the eyes so that balance no longer depended on sight. Before they could turn, they practiced Sema, listening, learning to recognize rhythm through the heart rather than through counting. When rotation began, it was slow and controlled, 1 turn, then 2, then 10. Daily routines alternated between physical discipline and devotional study. Food was plain, sleep was minimal, speech was limited to what was necessary. The silence itself was a practice. Dervishes ate together, moved together, prayed together, and learned to synchronize breath until the rhythm of the group overtook the rhythm of the individual. This long apprenticeship was about erasing attachment to the self. Each repetition dissolved a layer of personality. The movement had to continue when the mind stopped grasping at control, until turning was no longer something one did, but something that simply happened. The ritual of Sema is divided into parts, each saturated with symbolism. It begins with Na'at-i-Sharif, a recitation in praise of the Prophet Muhammad, followed by the deep, haunting sound of the ney flute, which represents the soul's longing for its source. Then the dervishes walk in slow circles, heads bowed, right hand on the heart, acknowledging their own smallness within the infinite. Only after removing the black cloth, which symbolizes the tomb of the ego, does the whirling begin. The motion is simple yet demanding. The left foot anchors, the right pushes outward. The arms rise, one hand turned upward to receive divine grace, the other turned downward to distribute it into the world. The eyes are open but unfocused, gazing softly beyond the visible. Breath becomes rhythm, and rhythm becomes prayer. The spin quickens until distinction between mover and motion dissolves. Every detail of the ritual serves a function. The white robe represents purity. The tall felt hat, called Sikke, symbolizes the gravestone of the self. The turning direction, counterclockwise, follows the motion of the planets around the sun. And the entire ceremony unfolds to music, which is an essential part of it. A measured rhythm of frame drums, the singing of the flute, the pulse of repetition, all invite the self to turn towards the divine. Sema ritual is an imitation of cosmic order, a gate to remembering who we are. Philosophically, this ritual expresses the Sufi view of existence itself. They believe that the universe turns from the smallest atom to the stars in continuous remembrance. The dervish, by spinning, enters into this rotation. What appears as circular movement is actually a reenactment of creation, separation from source, return through love, and annihilation of the ego. In the Mevlevi understanding, the body becomes a compass pointing towards unity, a process they call Tawhid. The training to reach the state is both physical and ethical, as Sema Zen also learns the balance of temperament, embodied in humility, patience, and discipline. Anger and vanity are considered signs of imbalance, no different from a body that stumbles. Just as the Sufi masters said, he who cannot control his breath cannot control his self. The Mevlevi therefore trained posture, gait, and speech as extensions of the same discipline. Movement without awareness seemed meaningless to them. For centuries, the Mevlevi were woven into the Ottoman cultural fabric. Many poets, calligraphers, and musicians were trained in their lodges. The discipline of the dervish mirrored that of the craftsman. In this sense, Sufi movement practice shared something with the artisan's labor, both aimed at transforming matter into beauty and self into transparency. But after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, everything changed. In 1925, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk banned the Sufi orders, closing their lodges. The Mevlevis were forced underground. Their rituals survived only as fragments, nothing more than private recitations, hidden gathering, and songs remembered in silence. When the Turkish government later revived the Sema as a cultural performance in the mid-20th century, it returned stripped of its spiritual intimacy and became a display for audiences rather than a prayer to God. Yet, even in that reduced form, the power of its motion persisted. Watching the whirling dervishes, one senses that something ancient is still being remembered. It is a language of the soul that is transmitted through the body. At its essence, the Sema is an answer to a question: how can movement become prayer? It teaches that remembrance is not confined to words, that the body, when purified of self, can remember its origin through surrender. In every spin, the dervish reenacts the eternal motion of the cosmos, the turning of planets, and the cycle of death and return. To move in this way is to inhabit the world fully. The dervish turns to find the stillness that lies at the center of all things. In the Sufi vision, movement is the way back to God.